We have reached the closing of our program. To close out the day, we hear again from the UN Global Compact CEO and Executive Director, Sanda Ojiambo, for her closing reflections and takeaways from today's event. Sanda, over to you.
Thank you. What an incredible and insightful couple of hours of discussion, of dialogue, of inspiration, and of challenge. On behalf of the UN Global Compact, I want to thank all of our partners, speakers, and participants for joining Target Gender Equality Live today. We've heard from CEOs, from young entrepreneurs, policymakers, academicians, UN officials, civil society activists from every region around the world. And I'm truly inspired by what we can do together, even as we face both challenges and opportunities. You know, in 2020, less than half of the world's women of working age were in the labor market, compared to 3/4 of men. In Central and Southern Asia last year, women held just 13% of managerial positions, less than half of the global average. In Sub-Saharan Africa, 9 out of 10 women continue to work in the informal sector, greatly increasing their economic and social vulnerability. In Latin America, 1 in 4 women has a child before the age of 18, restricting her ability to go to school or to join the paid workforce. And while we can see how these barriers limit opportunities for participation, what we know and what we have heard all through today, and certainly before, is that in spite of these challenges, women do not lack the intellect, the capacity, the drive, or the talent for personal and economic advancement. Instead, they simply lack the opportunity to participate equally, and their progress is stifled by cultural, social, economic, and political barriers to inclusion. And this is why the UN Global Compact convenes the business community every year during the Commission on the Status of Women. We know that business can play a vital role in realizing women's rights and their opportunities for meaningful and transformative participation. A year ago, on the eve of the 64th Commission on the Status of Women, the world went into lockdown, and COVID-19 began to wreak havoc around the globe. And since then, the pandemic has exposed gender fault lines in a myriad of ways. It has undermined women's livelihoods and girls' education. It has added to women's burden of unpaid work, and it has brought an alarming spike in domestic violence. The crisis has been anything but gender neutral. And although the pandemic is not yet over, efforts to rebuild are already underway. And if we choose an inclusive recovery path, I believe we can regain lost ground and accelerate progress for women and girls and keep the focus on the attainment of SDG 5. But building back better through this lens of gender will require systemic and cultural shifts. To achieve equality, women and men and institutions have to do the hard work of breaking down norms and orthodoxies and truly challenging systems and policies. At the UN Global Compact, gender equality is one of the pillars of our new 3-year strategic plan. It is central to all of our decision-making, and it is an area where we know that together business can lead and shape private sector responses to gender inequalities. In collaboration with our local networks around the world, we also launched the Target Gender Equality Program to help companies set ambitious, measurable targets for inclusion. And this year, the program is expanding from 19 to 45 countries, and we will be announcing more exciting initiatives on gender equality soon as part of our expanded strategic approach on gender. All this work is grounded in the Women's Empowerment Principles, or WEPs as we call them, which were launched by the UN Global Compact and our partners, UN Women, in the year 2010. The WEPs outline how businesses can support women in the workplace, across value chains, and in the community. We urge every company to adopt these essential principles, because in this decade of action on the Sustainable Development Goals, gender equality is a must-have and a must-do for progress on all of the goals. Today, you've heard about some of the pivotal transformations that we will need for a more gender equitable future. and which we at the Global Compact will certainly reflect in our forward-looking agenda. First, women must have a seat at the table because inclusive decisions lead to inclusive outcomes. Women's participation is a must. Women have been at the forefront in the response to COVID-19, and they must also be leaders in the recovery to come. Secondly, we need urgently concerted action to stop and prevent violence against women at home and at work. It is simply intolerable that an estimated 1 in 3 women will face physical or sexual violence in her lifetime. Third, women's unpaid work must be recognized, valued, and redistributed. The care economy is a significant one that must fully be taken into consideration. Fourth, female entrepreneurs and business owners must have access to financing, technology, and skills in the same way as their male counterparts. Small and medium enterprises led by women are the backbone of local economies worldwide, and we cannot let them down. And finally, we must focus hard on the climate crisis to ensure that climate negotiations, policies, investments, and innovations are inclusive and gender responsive. Businesses also need to adopt policies that respond to existing inequalities, the kind of policies that companies under our Target Gender Equality program are implementing and tracking right now through our local networks across the world. These policies include flexible work options, parental leave for both women and men, and employer-supported childcare, among many more. While gender equality certainly poses global challenges, our solutions and our innovations have to be tailored locally. And to that end, I encourage all businesses to engage with the Global Compact local networks in your countries. Once again, to all of you, thank you so very much for making this a dynamic and productive day. We count on your continued support and look forward to working with you, united in the business of a better world and forging forward on gender equality. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sanda, for your remarks and your inspiring leadership. Finally, we are thrilled to hear from Her Excellency Epsy Campbell Barr, Vice President for the Republic of Costa Rica. Mrs. Barr is a champion and advocate for human rights issues related to women, indigenous and Afro-descendant people, poverty, social development, and the environment. Mrs. Barr, over to you.
Thank you very much. Dear Mrs. Ojiambo, CEO and Executive Director of UN Global Compact. Dear friends, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm pleased to join women's leaders, entrepreneurs, representatives from government, business, civil society, and academia. And I commend UN Global Compact for the work they do to remove barriers to women's full empowerment in all spheres and all levels, and achieve gender equality once for all. Every actor, enterprise, institution, or individual must act now to ensure a future where equality between women and men is not understood as an aspiration, but rather an undeniable reality. Equal pay, equal treatment, equal representation in leadership, and equal access to career-building opportunities. During this time of great challenge, accentuated by multi-faced impact of the COVID-19 pandemic, it is inspiring to see key actors from government, business, and civil society come together to reinforce the collective action needed for women empowerment in the decade of action. The principle of leaving no one behind, set forth by 2030 Agenda Sustainable Development, is not only a call to reach the most vulnerable first, or to allow the full, equal, and meaningful participation of those who are benefited and affected by decision, but to truly engage the voices, expertise, and capabilities of all actors of society. Over the last 30 years, since the first national bill for promotion of women's social equality, Costa Rica has put in action state policy aim to achieve the equality of rights between women and men in political, economic, social, and cultural spheres, owing to engagement of women and feminist organizations, the contribution of international and regional normative frameworks, and to increase engagement of committed stakeholders, including from the private sector. Costa Rica has been not only a natural supporter of the United Nations Global Compact, grounded in its 10 principles and the Women Empowerment Principles, launching in 2010 the local network, but was also the first country in the world to commit the implementation of SDGs by announcing a national pact for sustainable development between the different branches of the state, representatives from local government, private sector, social and religious organization, academia, and civil society. These two platforms has been complementary and key frameworks for the development of policy and programs to advance women economic empowerment and autonomy. Costa Rica deeply believes the integrity of women's rights, and while important progress has been achieved in political representation, the public sector among all areas, economic empowerment remains an inequivocal strategy to impact other dimensions of women autonomy through the full and effective inclusion of women in the productive sector and reduction of the gender labor gaps. Women economic autonomy is, in this sense, a right to be fulfilled and the key for sustainable development. According to the finding of the Secretary General High-Level Panel on Women Economic Empowerment 2017, the inclusion of women in labor force since the beginning of 2000 represent 30% of the decrease in the reduction of poverty and income inequality in Latin America and the Caribbean. Estimates from the World Bank in Central America has shown that 10% increase in women economic participation would translate into 2 million people moving out of the poverty. However, the impact of pandemic of women economic participation is dramatic. Not only did female unemployment rise disproportionality, but tens of thousands of women have also been expelled from the labor market. For example, in my country, with a relatively small economy, we have been 43,000 fewer women in economic active population. Following the evidence and commitment to accelerate the advancement of women's rights and empowerment, the government of Costa Rica have dedicated important efforts and resources towards women economic capabilities and potential in coalition with key actors, including the private sector. We have made visible and value pay care where, by implementing a specific protection regimes for domestic workers, created satellite account which weights the contribution of women to the wealth product, and campaigning to protect the rights of domestic workers in the context of pandemic, including of wage policies. Through the Gender Equality Seal, we create a certification scheme for business and political and public institutions, drawing lesson and good practice for gender equality in employment, the insertion of women in labor market under permanence, promoting cultural changes within organization in favor of equality, while we continue to financing productive and associate projects, the provision of training and other social protection service for women entrepreneurs, the development of guidance for financial inclusion, strengthening of labor inspection process with a gender perspective, and joint work for prevention of gender-based violence in workplace, research and diagnosis of gender gaps, co-responsibility and of care and equal pay. We are working hand in hand with Global Compact Local Network in Costa Rica at its 32 participating companies, including on advancing the recently launched Gender Parity Initiative, a multisectoral, a wall of society strategy made 8 critical action to accelerate full and equal inclusion in labor market of women, recognizing that reducing the economic and financial gender gap is critical and an urgent need to end poverty and reduce inequality. A study in 2019 in the country showed that we could be able to cut poverty in half and increase GDP by 0.5% if only we include half of women in age of working who are currently unemployed, made of which to do so because of unpaid care burden. Through the Target Gender Equality Program, the local network is currently supporting 11 companies to establish a holistic plan and target to increase women opportunity for representation and leadership. Related to Gender Parity Initiative, Costa Rica was very pleased to announce last month through the More Women, More Natura program, the funding of 120 women's projects in Costa Rica with a budget of around $2 million for the protection of forests, reforestation, natural regeneration, agroforestry system, productive development, ecotourism, and working capital. As I have said in another fora, sustainable development will only be possible if women are given the opportunity to effectively, meaningfully participate in the management of natural resources and climate action. Neither will development and prosperity be possible without an environment that guarantees the rights to life, health, housing, or food. Costa Rica is committed to potentiate the leadership of women in the face of existential threat of climate change and accelerate loss of biodiversity. The impact of crises are never gender neutral, and COVID-19 is not an exception. In every country of the world, women and girls are disproportionately bearing the burden of massive social and economic consequences of pandemic. COVID-19 crisis is exacerbating all forms of gender-based violence and exploits the existing structural gender inequalities, among others, the unequal burden of responsibility in reproductive work to bear broke or our economies and society, which, while not value, not pay, represent about $10 billion annually in 13% of global GDP. As the crisis pushes more women into extreme poverty and social exclusion, the limit gains we made in the past decades toward gender equality are at risk of being reserved. In this time urgent for action, Costa Rica calls upon to make a civilization jump into the 21st century by putting women and girls in the center of our recovery efforts and to place gender inequality as an objective for all members of society. In this endeavor, the private sector has a key role to play. From this perspective, achievement gender equality, and with the inclusion not only of women in general, but all diversity of women, indigenous, Afro-descendants, rural women, we make up half of humanity for too long released of shadow, is one of the main challenges to achieve higher standard of well-being and development. It is not only about numbers, but representation and access to power and decision-making for all women. I commend the work of the UN Global Compact to raise the level of ambition, incorporate sustainability, and applaud the network's efforts in guiding Costa Rica's company of their gender equality journey and promoting the value of public-private partnership. I'm proud that Costa Rica is one of the members of the UN Global Compact Government Group, and we will continue to working in close partnership with all commitment partners. As this forum comes to an end, I urge you to keep in this momentum, take the leap from commitments to action, and start building the partnership needed to overcome this crisis and leave no women and girl behind. Few times in the history, solidarity has ever had so much value and meaning. The stakes could not be higher. Women's full and equal participation in the economy and in decision-making is necessary funding to achievement our collective goals, and more importantly, to cover new forms of doing politics, doing business, participating in public life with equality, inclusion, and solidarity. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Ms. Barr, for your powerful remarks. We hope you have enjoyed spending time with us at Target Gender Equality Live. Remember, you can continue to follow the conversation on social media using the hashtag Target Gender Equality. And video highlights of today's sessions will be posted on our YouTube channel very soon. UN Global Compact is committed to mainstreaming gender equality action, and we are ready to support through our local networking in close to 70 countries. We encourage you to learn more by reading the 2021-2023 strategy found in the UN Global Compact booth. Reminder that registration is open now until June 30 for the second round of Target Gender Equality. Companies from around the world are invited to register their interest in setting and reaching ambitious corporate targets for women's representation and leadership. Finally, we hope you will join us again this June for our 2021 UN Global Compact Leaders Summit. Registration is now live today. I am Lidia Cacho, and it has been absolutely fabulous being your MC for today's inaugural Target Gender Equality Live event. Thank you. Gracias. Obrigado.